In this video, we're going to discuss the basic general introduction to our AP Bio text. This goes along with Chapter 1. We're going to start with characteristics of life. So all living things have certain characteristics that they have that, as you check off the boxes, that allows us to say that it is actually alive. So if it fails to do these, fails to meet these characteristics of life, then technically it's not alive. The first is order. Organisms show order. Cells show order. There's a rhyme, a reason. In this video, we're going to talk about the general introduction to AP Bio. This goes along with Chapter 1. We're going to start with characteristics of life. Now, this is not necessarily in any order, and the pictures that came from the text aren't in any kind of order, but we're going to start with the first one, which happens to be the word order. There's order and organization in all living things, from the cellular level to the organism to the ecosystem to the biosphere. There's order in it all, and that is one of the characteristics that you will find of life. There's adaptation, and things evolve. Populations, species, they change over time based upon what has been successful and what has not. Organisms can respond to the environment. Basically, the stimulus from the environment causes an organism to respond to that. In this case, it's a Venus flytrap that has been triggered to eat, looks like some sort of dragonfly. Regulation. All organisms have the ability to regulate, to maintain a homeostasis or a balance, maintain their temperature, maintain their sugar levels. E is energy processing, which is also known as metabolism. Organisms use energy, they obtain energy, they harness the sun's energy, cellular respiration, photosynthesis. These are all examples of metabolic processes. Reproduction. They all reproduce. Could be sexually, could be asexually, 2 cells versus 1 cell. They all grow and develop. Organisms get bigger as they grow, more cells are added, and they develop into the adult forms. And probably should be listed first, but one at the bottom is cells. All organisms are made of 1 or more cells. Those are the characteristics of life. We talk about organization. We can start on the right side and we can work our way to the left. Atoms go together to form molecules. Molecules actually go together to form macromolecules, then organelles. Finally, you get to a cell, which is the basic unit of life. That's the smallest living thing that's out there that actually possesses all of the characteristics of life. Cells go together to form tissues, tissues into organs, organs into organ systems into organisms, then populations, communities, ecosystems, and finally the biosphere. So there's the level of order and organization in the living world. When you talk about metabolism, energy processing, energy use, basically what you're talking about is sunlight coming into the producers using that to create some sort of organic material that they can use. They can also feed other organisms. So producers are going to feed the consumers, but at every step of the way, you lose a little bit as heat. So light energy turns into chemical energy. Chemical energy is passed on, and then we lose some as heat as well. That's metabolic processes, the sum of all chemical reactions. Homeostasis or regulation typically shows, we see this in feedback mechanisms, whether it be negative or positive feedback mechanisms. And for example, in this negative feedback mechanism, what we have is the idea is that we're going up, I'm over here, A molecule gets converted into B molecule, which gets converted into C, which finally gets converted into D. So really, we start with A, but we really want D. That's like a little factory in our body. We start with A as a reactant, and a raw material, and we're trying to make D out of it. The thing is, A is converted to B using an enzyme. Then B is converted to C using an enzyme. And C is converted to D using an enzyme. And we make a bunch of D. The thing about D is there's no reason to continue to make D if we got plenty of it. So D can actually feed back to turn off enzyme 1. And if enzyme 1 is turned off, then A cannot make B, which cannot make C or D. That's called negative feedback. And that regulates the amount of D or product that's being made. And that is a homeostatic mechanism by being able to keep balance. Now, there's a different one called positive feedback. And in positive feedback, what happens is once you get a lot of the product, so this is W, X, Y, and Z turning into product, it turns out that the organism actually makes more product because once you get some, it needs even more. There's different examples out there, but the idea is that the Z product actually causes an enzyme to even become more active and make even more Y, which then even makes more Z. So that's still a type of regulation. It's just a positive feedback regulation. This is about diversity and classification, also known as taxonomy, where we have a whole lot of organisms up here. We can see we have bears, we have, I guess, a cheetah, we have a dog, a dolphin, a zebra, frogs, birds, turtles, plants, mushroom, bacteria. We got all kinds of stuff in here. Well, these are called, actually, that's not a bacterium. That's going to be some protest because it says eukarya, and eukarya are eukaryotes. So these are all going to have a nucleus, but we trim it down a little bit into this kingdom, which is the animal kingdom. So you can see that we lost these three things down here. Then we go down another step. We're weeding out different things. We lost the starfish, the butterfly, and the sponge going into the chordates. And finally, we get to the mammals, and now we lost the frog and the bird, the fish, the turtle. We're left with these organisms, and these are all mammals. They all feed their young with milk. Then you go to carnivora, which are the carnivores, Ursidae, Ursus, and Ursus americanus, which is the American black bear. So you can see what's happening as we go from all of this diversity. And we classify all that diversity as something, but then we have to continue to classify it by having very specific characteristics that they must follow in order to get to the next level. And finally, you get down to here to Ursus americanus, which is the American black bear, and it has fulfilled all of the characteristics to get to the next level, and finally, it's all by itself. So from all this diversity, we can get to one with enough characteristics, and we've classified it as the Ursus americanus. One thing is important to remember: scientific names are based on the genus and species. So the genus is Ursus, and the species is americanus. You'll notice that the genus is always capitalized, and the species is not. And they're written in italics. That's the proper way to write it. And you can always abbreviate the genus with a first letter, but not the species. So you could have said U americanus, like Tyrannosaurus rex is T rex, and E. coli is, or Escherichia coli is E. coli. We would be H. sapiens for Homo sapiens. A couple of large kingdoms. We have bacteria and archaea. Those are, we can kind of lump those into the bacterial kingdom for now. These are single-celled. They're also in a different domain than eukarya. But then we have the protists, the fungi, animals, and the plants. These are very large groups. In the introduction, we should also talk about scientific method. And the scientific method is how science is completed. It's how it's done. The main steps are, first you make an observation. Here is a person trying to use a flashlight noticed that it is not on. So she made an observation. She comes up with a question. Well, are the batteries dead? Is the bulb burnt out? Those are her questions. She then runs a hypothesis. So she comes up with an educated guess. They are dead batteries. That is the problem. Well, her prediction or her hypothesis that goes along with that is that if I replace the batteries, then the lamp will come on. If then statement. She then tests it. That's her experiment. And then she comes up with a conclusion. If I change the batteries, the lamp will light. The flashlight will come on. She runs her experiment. It does not come on. It falsified her hypothesis. It did not support the hypothesis. So she goes to hypothesis 2. It's a burnout bulb. So if I change the bulb, then the light bulb will come on and the flashlight will work. So she replaces the bulb. She runs her test. She runs her experiment. And the light comes on. We could say it does not falsify the hypothesis. We could say it also supports the hypothesis. So that is the basic idea of an if-then statement hypothesis and the overall idea of scientific method. That is a very brief introduction to our book, but those are some big ideas that we should be relatively familiar with as we move forward.